just like, I just having to constantly remind myself as a Black person, as a Black woman, that like, hey, walk upright, not just because, I'm a Black woman, but because it's like I have just as much as humanity as anyone else.
Hi, folks. I am here with Astrid Hacker, and I listened to her vlog Here to Edify, where she was talking about edifying people of color using God's word and even other people within the community. And I just loved her message. I love the heart of what you're doing. And today I wanted us to talk about racism or the possibility of facing racism when you are traveling. And I think that we can have a good conversation here. And I just wanted to be very transparent. So the first time I approached you, it was to talk about singles who are traveling. And that is fine. It's also important. But after hearing the message that you were willing to share with people, I was like, okay, there's something deeper here. And I would like to go in that direction. So thank you so much for being willing. So let us know more about you.
Yes, thank you for having me. As you said, my name is Astrid. I'm from the United States, Virginia to be specific, and I work in production. And as April said, I have a podcast here to edify, and so yeah.
So yes, your podcast Here to Edify. Why did you start it? What was your heart behind, starting this podcast?
Yes, so it actually started off as a video project, and that was actually 6 years ago or so, 5 or so years. And I was actually in grad school. I was in New York City. There were a lot of killings of unarmed Black men. So specifically that summer was Philando Castile. And there were others, but his name right now comes to mind. And I just remember being in New York City. I was interning at a company that was largely, white. There were Black people, but it was just not. We definitely weren't the majority. And so I think I didn't even realize, but going into work and we're not really talking about something that is so blaringly huge.
Yes.
I was just like, man, what can I do that kind of shows Black people in a positive light? Like, we are not just, to be talked about when it's in memoriam. And so I did this video piece where I would go find people in the greater New York area, and I would just interview Black people that were doing interesting, different things. So whether that be, oh, this is a guy in fashion design and he's doing fashion for men. That's interesting. Let's talk about that. And so on and so forth. But that actually ended when I left grad school, and life happens, and I'm moving along, and then I come to the point where I'm like, oh, I'd really like to create a podcast, but I have no idea what I want it to be on. And so after much back and forth and deliberation, I had a friend that was like, why don't you just do Here to Edify? Like, why don't you just bring that back in a podcast setting? And I was like, oh, that's genius. And so
Yes.
did that, but I wanted this time around to still focus on people of color. So large majority of the people I talk to are Black, but I want to talk to people of color. And I, from that time, when it was a video piece, have grown spiritually. And so I decided that I didn't want to just randomly like, oh, people of color are doing cool things. Like, no, I want God to be in the center. And my heart behind it now is kind of like to show that people of color, they know the word of God. Like, we are not running to white culture to understand better. And there are people out there that are doing ministry in their respective fields. And they may not call it ministry. It may not look like traditional ministry, but, there's an actor over here that is, going into this thinking about how can I serve God. There is a business owner over here that's like, I want to, an entrepreneur that's like, how can I serve God, and so on and so forth. And sometimes it's topical. Sometimes we're talking about friendship, like my most recent episode, and then other times we are specifically talking about the field that an individual is in. And yeah, that's kind of my hopefully not too long spiel about what Here to Edify is.
No, I like it. Yeah, I really love what you said, because for me recently, I have been thinking about the fact that, wow, there has been a lot of negativity regarding Black people, people of color, and there are things we need to be aware of, but it can make you feel so down, so depressed sometimes, and feeling negative. But then I'm like, so what about the good things that Black people are doing? What about how we're contributing to society, because we have a lot of strengths just like anyone else. So I love your heart regarding that. I remember the interview you did about this guy who had his business, and when he had just started, he contributed some of his expertise to people for free. And then I do remember your recent episode where you're talking about relationships and how we can actually have healthy relationships with those around us. So it's all good. It's not just about racism exists. It's important, However, it's also shining a light, as you said, on the good things that people are doing. So I love it. I applaud it. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I think it's really important to know that, yes, that is an important issue to many, Black people, many, people of color, but obviously Black people specifically. But there's so many other things that we are talking about, so many other conversations we are having as well. And that ends up being a piece of like a large piece of the conversations we're having, because they affect us. But we're also out here, living life, waking up, enjoying family, laughing, joking. We're not 24/7 activists, And so I think showing the humanity that historically has been stripped away is, something that I enjoy being able to hopefully, just give a piece of that to the world.
Yeah, so good. And you also mentioned that you love traveling, right? Yeah, and I wanted to ask if while you were traveling, have you ever encountered, anything that was racist or made you wonder, oh, did that happen because I am Black,
Yeah, so I do love traveling, as you said. I think that is one of the most important things that we can do if we're given, the opportunity. Yeah, so in regard to any racist encounters, so I was thinking about this question, and I'm really thinking on, like, what are some instances? And I actually have not necessarily had any racist encounters. I think my experiences thus far are interesting. And so the only thing I can think of that, again, was not a racist encounter, but it was interesting and made me think, how do you view Black people, was I was in Paris, France, and there was an older white woman, super sweet. Her and her son were out eating, and my friends and I were out eating, and we ended up kind of having a conversation with them. And there was a moment where she was just like, yeah, da-da-da-da-da, because I can't remember the whole context of the conversation, but she was like, because you all are strong Black women. And I kind of just like giggled to myself, because again, like I said, we are not 24/7 revolutionaries. Like, I'm not walking around here, yes, with my fist up and I'm a strong Black woman. And so I found that kind of just funny and interesting, because I really wondered, like, does that speak to your perception of Black people? Are you saying something that you think we want to hear? And like how are you seeing Black people portrayed, whether it be through film or just maybe on the news and television, like, or how are you hearing us being spoken about that makes you think like this is how I should like approach them, this is how I compliment them, like, you are you're a strong Black woman. And so, like I said, it wasn't a racist encounter, but it was definitely an encounter where it felt very much so like someone that awkwardly was fumbling through a group of people that she maybe does not often come in contact with. And so trying to figure out like, how do I talk to them? And it's like, girl, we are people, like
Yeah.
you talk to us regular, you're not going to see, the white girl, you're a strong white one, like, yeah, you can communicate with us in the same way that you would anyone else.
Yeah, and now that you mention it, I listen, people, please go listen to her podcast because it has so much fire. But I do remember the episode you did with your mom about the burden of strength that's given to Black women, and it hit me because I'm like, yeah, that's what a lot of people expect from us, even our Black brothers, and we love them, but they do expect that a lot from us. And sometimes we're like, we want to be comforted as well. We want to be held. We want you to think of us as feminine women who would need your strength in some other ways. If we're talking about men or even just with other women, we're like you, but we may have different cultural norms or expectation, but we're not like going around, as you said, being activists all the time, or you can't come to me a certain way. I'm a person, a human being, and try to get to know me as myself,
Yeah, no, completely. And then I often think too that that's kind of like a backhanded compliment, whether it's intended or not, because I think like strength, right? We look at like strength was good, but as Black women, that strength has come out of necessity as opposed to just like I'm doing, like it has come out of, well, you had to be strong, you didn't have that nuclear family because it was stripped apart, and so therefore it's like, oh well, Black women are having to step up and be mom and dad. Black women are having to step up and be breadwinners because again we look at like the mass incarceration of Black and brown people and men specifically, and so I think that it strips away specifically what you said, the fact that we do want to be loved, like we are gentle and emotional and all the things that are maybe more easily attached to other women. Like we are too. I'm not gonna lie, like sometimes culturally I do think we have an air about us, but my desire would be for us to be able to confidently walk in that while also being perceived as just women, like we are just women. Yes, maybe I stand with my back a little straighter and maybe I'd be quicker to, say something back to you and not just let it fly. But that should not strip away my femininity for have you attaching some superhuman strength to me that I'm trying to live up to that is not realistic, for any.
Yeah, right. And the history in the United States is similar to the Caribbean in a way, in that the nuclear family was stripped away. Women had to step up. They had to do things that it would have been easier if they had both the mom and the dad. And you can even see effects in our society today, right? So a lot of the women still, we are told, you have a career, you get your life together, don't rely on a man. And yes, it's good, but it's like it's to the extreme where we're not allowed to be soft. I don't want this to seem as if, we're forced or pressured to be something we're not. But the perception can affect us where maybe someone wouldn't reach out to us as much to be like, hey, how are you doing? Where it can actually hurt us and it can put a big pressure on us, which is unhealthy.
Yes. And like you said, it's not forced. It's more so ingrained. It's more so you see it. I've never had my mom say, be strong, but I've seen a standard set, and like, oh, this is my standard, and then but then you get out into the world and you learn a little bit more, and you're like, oh, this is deep. This isn't just like she took care of business. This is kind of historically and passed down to her and so on and so forth. And so, like you said, it's not forced. It's more so the effects of history. Like they're alive and well today. Excuse me. It is not just that happened back then and therefore similar to what you're saying. It is. These are things that the history effects are present.
It does, and we need to address it. And I just want to go back to even facing racism. I have here in Spain, and I wanted to address it because I realized that it is a perception that is put upon you, where people will think that you are more prone to be a thief, if you go beside them. So I have to protect my back. Or, I have to put my hand in my pocket if you come close by me and I'm walking on the street, the same street as you. Or I have to watch out for you. But I don't know why. It's like, first of all, I just want to say that racism is an issue of the heart. And if someone has decided that they will see you in this way because of what they have learned, or because, it's taught. It's taught. But if they decided that that is something they're going to embrace, then they will. Because I've met beautiful people who have loved on me in a foreign country because they know you're away from home. In Spain, Spanish people, I've met some beautiful people. And then I've encountered some, not so beautiful people. I didn't want to say it, but hey, it's like the hard characteristics. And what I realized, it's based on the perception that they have probably gotten about Black people. I don't know. And I'm not trying to be the one to correct it, right now or at all. But I'm saying that as a human being, I'm affected by that because I can see that the perception that you have towards me is wrong, and you act out in a certain way, which is very negative because it's disproportionate, because you wouldn't act that way to someone else. But you feel as if you have to me, and you do not know me. I understand the need to be cautious with people who you're not familiar with, like strangers. But when you get to the point where you feel as if you have to act towards me because I'm Black in a certain way, then that is wrong.
Yeah, unfortunately, that has been the perception that has been pumped all over the world. And so I think that we have like a bad rep because it is what people see in shows, what people see when if there are protests, like you're seeing, like, look at these people, and so we have been painted in a light of these people are less than, these people are rowdy, these people are honestly just lies,
Yeah.
And it is heartbreaking that that we are not seen as just the humans that we are,
Yeah.
I think that's one of the beautiful things about traveling, but also like being around different cultures, even for myself, because sometimes you take that on and you internalize it, is to see that there are crappy people in every nationality, in every
Yes.
ethnic group, and then there are beautiful people in every ethnic group. There are super smart people in every ethnic group, and then there are people that are like, I don't care, like I and so just like just having to constantly remind myself as a Black person, as a Black woman, that like, hey, walk upright, not just because I'm a Black woman, but because it's like I have just as much as humanity as anyone else, and these prejudices, they're misplaced.
Yes.
And it's like, it's sad, but even in 2021, we are having to go across the world, in a way, preaching, whether it be in our the way we move, or literally, with our mouth, just being like, no, I am just like you, know what I'm saying? There's a author, Zora Neale Hurston. She had like penned a short letter, and one of the things that she said was, Black people are no better or no worse, than anyone else.
Oh, yes.
And that has like stuck with me ever since, like, learning that back in college. It's just like, yeah, we are both no better, but we are no worse. We are no worse, we are no better. Like, we're people. And it is unfortunate that this perception has gone out, and like you said, people have decided in their heart to take it on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think honestly, they don't realize that that doesn't just affect me, that affects you because you've allowed this, disease really, this lie to come in and permeate how you interact with certain individuals.
Right. Yeah. And I love that quote. I remember when I was just coming to Spain, this lovely Nigerian mom, she said something to me that has stuck with me all throughout my time being here, and I believe it will for my whole life. She said that you are not inferior to anyone else, and no one is inferior to you. She said that to me, and that oh my gosh, I can't even describe how much that just uplifted me, because I'm like, she sees and she knows that you may encounter people who think a certain way, more than likely because you're different, you look different. But just remember, you're not inferior to them and they're not inferior to you.
That way of thinking, I think, is like super revolutionary.
Mhm.
I wish more of us had that being pushed into us, like
Yeah.
everyone, not just Black people, but everyone,
One thing I do I'm annoyed with is because I am teaching kids right now and they are beautiful. They have this curiosity where they're just like, okay, you look different and I want to know more about you. But I am concerned about the parents, that could possibly be teaching them, to think this way. So even though I'm there, it's because I know that this has been like for centuries. That woman that hid her bag or put her hand on her bag, it was taught to her by someone else and she decided to accept it. So what could she be teaching her kids and grandkids? And I know that we have decisions to make. So I'm proud of these children that one time this boy, he's in high school and he drew this cartoon or something like that, this drawing. And he was like, a Black person is equal to a white person. We were talking about history and the history of slavery came up and he drew that. And I'm like, okay, they can decide to not accept it. So that's beautiful. But at the same time, it's not easy if you're hearing people around you saying, oh, you should be cautious around a Black person. So it's like, it's a fight that, I don't know, it will take more than one person, I believe. So how do you think that a Black person, especially a single person, can protect themselves while traveling, like a single Black woman?
Yeah, so for me, I've always found it important the way one carries themselves. Like whether you're in a new country or you're in a new city, because I spent time living in New York City, as I mentioned before, and I think it is very important to walk like you know where you're going. As a woman, we know that it's not always the safest place for us out there. And so I think that putting off this air that like I know where I'm going, I know what I'm doing, I think is always helpful because just common sense, right? Like it's easier to look like prey when you look like you don't know where you're going, what you're doing. But if I'm in a space where I can give off the perception that I am a local, and so when I think of things like, okay, Paris is a very metropolitan city, so if I don't open my mouth, you don't know if I am a local or if I'm not. I spent 2.5 months in Uganda about 5 years ago, and there, which was an amazing experience, I again look like a local. I'm a brown skin girl. If I don't open my mouth, then they may be able to. It's this. I could potentially blend in if I carry myself a certain way. So as a woman traveling, I think some of the basic things is like letting someone know, obviously, where you are, but knowing where. I always would plan ahead where I'm going. Where am I going? Whether I'm, getting on Google Maps or something. This is my itinerary, so you know what you plan to do. But then also, I'm not walking with my head buried in the sand or my head buried in my phone. or but I still have it. I glance down, all right, this is where I'm going, but I'm really walking with an air of like, I'm not scared, I'm not nervous, and if I am, I'm not going to give that perception off. And I think sometimes that does more than what we think it does, to just like look like you know where you're going. And I had a professor back in college talk about like the art of performance. Like you carry yourself a certain way, and everyone else they don't know.
Yeah.
They weren't there when you became this character. And so for me, that's just huge. It's like really planning. Just the planning process of knowing what you're doing. No, you can't plan for every outcome, but what you can do is let someone know, this is where I'm going, this is what I'm doing. But then you yourself have a game plan for how things are going to go. I think anywhere you are, night is never, a great time to just be out doing whatever. So hopefully that is something that women aren't out here just readily doing, specifically, when you're in another country. But I think that, I think that we can be smart and enjoy traveling as much as the man that goes and doesn't even think twice,
So true. Yes, I agree. Definitely know where, well, at least have the perception, or no, not the perception, the performance.
Yeah.
Yeah, where you are the air to yourself, where you're just confident in where you're going or what you're doing. And I will add to it as well, just as you said, let someone know what you're doing. I would say that shows how important community is. And yeah, I've talked about it a lot on this channel, especially with other people I've interviewed. Like, having the community is important. And if you're going somewhere new, having a community back home and trying your best to connect with a community in the place you're going to.
Yeah, no, I would 100% agree. I think, again, one of the beauties of traveling more, or being connected with more people, sometimes they're in different countries, and so it's like, oh, if I go here, you're here, and so there are things that you can tell me that, my friend that's never been here can't, and so I think community is so, so important. I would 100% agree with what you're saying, is connecting with people in the place that you're going, but then also, like you said, back at home, or even bringing that community with you, so I think traveling with people is always, great to do. And it doesn't have to be, it's a whole tribe of us, it can be, all right, 2 of us are going to do this. But one thing I would say in regard to that is something I've learned is to be really intentional about the type of person you're traveling with. Okay. Because I took a trip with this, so that trip to Paris, I went with about 5 girlfriends. And so one, I kind of laughed because I had a few friends that were like, when you said you were going with all girls, I was like, just that how we are looked at sometimes. It's like, oh, all you girls are going to go and you think you'll be okay. But essentially, there were some that were like, we don't want to get up early. So how do people view vacations? Some people are like, I do this as I want to relax. Whereas I realized I'm like, no, I'm going to go home and I'll relax when I get back at home. And so I think that, yes, bringing that community is important, but being perceptive about who am I going to mesh well with in the way that I want to travel. And yeah, I don't think there's like, that is, it's okay to be like, I love this friend, but we travel differently. And so maybe we wouldn't be the best to go on a trip together, or we get someone that's like myself, and then maybe, her and someone else that's like her. And so at the very least, if we break up, I have someone that is like, yeah, no, let's get up early, let's go. But if you all maybe want to get up later and we meet up late, just kind of personality is important, is what I'm getting at as well. When you're, traveling with your community also.
Wow, I've never thought of that, like thinking about the personality of the people. Wow, that's insightful.
Yeah, I learned the hard way that like, yes, we had a few bumps in the road, but I love those girls to death. We are still very close, and it was a learning experience. It was like, oh, this is how you, because when you just travel kind of by yourself or with family or yeah, when you travel and it's not like a friend group, you're not thinking about these things. You're like, oh, people travel like I do, right? Like they go and this is how they feel about it. And then you go with them and you're like, oh no, that's not true. Like people really do view vacations and traveling very different. Some people like myself, I like to go to the places where the regular people live. Some people want to go to the super touristy places. And so it's like, oh, these things are important to know so that we can all enjoy our time in a place and feel like we really got out what we came to get out of it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And as you said, it's not that you're not going to be friends anymore. You're just being intentional about at that time, depending on what you desire to get out of the experience, who would be the best person to match up with or best people.
Yes, completely.
Yeah, really good. And how do you still make the most of, your travel opportunities and thrive while being aware?
Yeah, I think that that I feel like would just be just the mindset. So like making the most of the trip. What do you want to get out? What do you plan to get out of traveling when you go? So I'm a huge foodie. So I'm like, I want to find all the spots with all the good food, But as I said earlier, I'm also like, what do the everyday people do, in their regular routine? I don't need to see, where everyone from all over is cramped up in this space to see, we'll say the Eiffel Tower, and I'm like, that's great. We saw it, but what is the average person doing? And I think that for me has come out of my very first trip abroad. That's what I did. I spent it in Uganda with the locals. Like we were just living like locals. We were not in the major city. And so I think getting the most out of a trip or a vacation is knowing what feeds me, what fuels me, what am I going to be able to take back, and whether that is physically taking something back or just I'm taking back a story, I'm taking back a memory. These are things that are important to me, to eat well, to experience things that are unique to this culture, unique to this place. Having someone maybe show me what the average person that is from out of town or out of the country isn't really thinking about or asking about, so having unique experiences, for me, those are what make a trip that I'm like, this was good. I got to experience those things that feed me, and that's going to be different for everyone.
Yeah. And it, be aware of yourself. And I've also found that living abroad long term will actually show you more about what it is that feeds you too. So you may have an idea before you go, but if it is that you'd like to live long term abroad, then that can also show you different things about yourself as a person too. Especially outside of your comfort zone. It's really good. Yeah, I want to go into another area of dating, right? So you did an episode as well where you were talking about, I don't remember the title, but it was about someone who shared a blog about a church auntie who wanted to matchmake her son, but she specifically said she didn't want the person to be black or brown. Now, we are aware of this, that there are some people that do not want to date outside their race, or more people who are of color. So how do you encourage people who, would like to date, but they're wondering, okay, will this person want to date outside of their race? Will their person want to date me with my skin tone?
Yeah. So, this question, I was like, oh man, because yeah. So basically, it's a question that will cause me to be vulnerable, because I've been thinking about this for a while. And as someone that is very much aware of being a Black woman, and that sometimes not being the first pick, whether it be for a Black man or men of other ethnicities.
Right.
I think I am still working through that. I think the advice that I would give is to, so honestly, this question I feel like would be speaking to myself, is to not focus too much on that, because I think when we focus too much on it, whether it be consciously or subconsciously, it strips away our worth, because it's like, oh man, if he likes me or doesn't like me, I'm attaching a piece of me to this person's perception of me, as opposed to going about my life and being all that I am, and trusting and believing and hoping that the person that comes into my life, whatever they look like, they're coming in and they have gotten the whole of me. They're not getting this piece of me that's like, oh shoot, guys may not like me because I'm Black, and so therefore I need to change. Like, no, let me be the whole of who I am, and trusting that whoever comes in, they're attracted to that, the whole of who I am, not, this perceived reality because I'm trying to fit a mold. And so I think that it's hard. It is hard sometimes when you're aware that, like, I'm really may not be the first choice for a good chunk of guys. But yeah, I think my advice would just be to confidently just walk in who you are. But then also, as a believer, I have to trust that my father in heaven, like, knows the desires of my heart. Like, and so, he says, when you ask for bread, I'm not going to give you a stone. And so if I'm asking for relationship, if I'm asking for love in that way, I have to rest in the fact that, like, you hear me, you know my heart, you know my desire, and you're not just like, I don't have time, or no, I'm not going to give her that just because she wants it. Like, no, that is not who he is. So I think that for the believer, that can also be a space to grow one's trust. And, like, do I really believe that the Lord wants best for me? Wow. That he wants to give me good. And so for me, it's a constant reminding, like, hey, yeah, like, let me have this struggle take me back to God, and yeah, just let me have it ask me, do I love him? Do I trust him? Do I trust that he loves me, and is really wanting to give me good? And maybe I don't have that thing now because it's not what I need just yet, because he also says that I will not withhold any good thing from you. And so if I don't have it, maybe right in this moment, it's not good, but we don't know what's happening tomorrow. We don't know what's happening later today. We don't know what's happening a year from now. And so I think that my advice would be, it is an exercise in how much do I trust God, and allowing the rest to flow from that.
Wow. Yeah. Having that grounding, that foundation, it's so important. Yeah, as you said, thank you so much for being vulnerable, by the way. It is true. It is something that a lot of Black women face, including myself. And it's even sad because it's with our Black brothers too. Like, sometimes they're not their first choice either, which is infuriating. But anyways, yeah, what you said about going back to trusting God, that he he has what's best for you. And what I think of, like, we have so many gifts, just like other women too, but we have our gifts, and it'll be nice to see the men that do appreciate what we have.
Yeah.
Like, some of them will miss it, and well, they missed it. But the ones that decided, no, I see her as a gift, I see her as favor, and I'm going to do my best to try to obtain that. Well, he got his gift because he saw something else that the other men did not. They decided they did not want to see because they were looking on the outside.
Yes.
You know?
And I think that is why it is so important that we not change and shift ourselves, you know, because this may be a reality. Don't stop being who you are, you know, because it's like you can't be that man's favor if you're over here, oh, okay, let me be quieter, or let me, you know, let me dress this way, or, you know, let me make sure my hair looks this way, you know, like if you are falsely changing who you are, then you can't be all that you are to be to the person that the Lord is like, here, I have this person for you, you know. And so I think it is very important to not equate your worth to someone else's, to whether or not someone else values all that you have, you know. And so again, that goes back to like, my identity is in Christ. The Lord, he loves me. And so therefore I will stand firm in that, and I'll wait for the person to come.
You don't want to wait for the person who is like, all right, well, I don't know, like, you don't want it to be someone who has that thought, but they're like, okay, I'll stick with it. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, they did not see the word in the first instant. No, you wanna wait on God to bring the person who appreciates it.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. So you said you have a background in production?
Yes, I do.
Oh, wild. So what's that like? And I'm sure it helps you with your podcast too.
Yes, so I have a degree in multimedia journalism, so that has given me skills in audio production, but also video production. And production is a word that is like a bag full of things, you know, it can be so many things. But essentially, yeah, being able to bring all the pieces together. So I have, I've been the person that holds the camera. I've been the person that is doing audio. And so, yeah, these are things that do help me with my podcast, because it's like, oh, okay, I know how to edit because I've had to do it over here. Or I know what sounds good, what makes a story, you know, having listened to like beautifully done audio stories, but also having that video experience, being able to, okay, if I'm bringing this over and people can't see, what are things that are going to catch their ear that I wouldn't have to think about if this was a video, because their eyes, you know, are catching it all. So, yeah.
That's really good. It's true. Like, the audio will be different from the video. And I will say that even your voice itself is lovely. So, you know, yeah, it's really good. So what book would you recommend that you think everyone should read?
I would say Trevor Noah's book, Born a Crime. He you know, he's a man, but he's surrounded by these just beautiful, I guess, yeah, going back to strong, because I do think there is a beauty in that. Women that they took stances in his life, you know, like they took stances of, you know, he's a mixed race, and for his mom to just like, yeah, I love my son, and I'm you know, I'm taking my son, and just choices that she has made, you know, throughout his life, things that she has gone through, but then also just the book as a whole. I love being able to read books where I can cry, I can laugh, I can be sad, I can be super happy. And that book definitely ran the whole gamut of emotions. And yeah, I think it's just a good read. And so that's always usually my go-to is Trevor Noah's book, Born a Crime.
Wow, that's interesting. So is it a narration of his life?
Yes, so it is. And so you get a little bit of the history of apartheid in South Africa, because that is what he grew up. And I also, I should say, like, I love history as well. So you're getting a piece of that, but then also he just has some like wild stories that he's, you know, gone through with his mom. But he's also an amazing storyteller, you know, because people can have amazing experiences but not be able to relay those. But he is, he's an amazing storyteller. And like I said, it has all the emotions wrapped up in that book, and so I love it.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Like it draws you in because it just feels so human. So you're like, you feel everything with him. That's so good. I think I'd like to read that book actually. What advice would you give specifically to any Black or person of color traveling abroad, out of state or province?
Well, first I would say do it.
Uh,
Like travel.
yeah.
I think that traveling opens your eyes to so much.
Mm-hmm.
It takes you out of your bubble, you know, just to
Yes.
take you out of like, oh, this is what I'm used to. These are all the people I see. This is what they do. But then you realize there's a girl that grew up, you know, uh, you know, 1,000 miles away from me and had completely different experiences. There's a little girl that grew up in a whole nother country that had different experiences than I did. And we just happened to be born in different places, like that's the only difference. And so, yeah, I think I would just say do it. I think I initially viewed travel as like, oh, it's too expensive. I can't do it. But then you realize it's not, it's not that crazy expensive. Well, you can plan your trip where it's not,
Okay.
where it's not crazy expensive. A friend of mine introduced me to the fact that you can kind of like sporadically, here, I'm just going to find inexpensive plane tickets and maybe not choose where I'm going to go, but allow that to choose where I go. So that's an option, or if it's like, hey, I want to specifically go to this place, well then, hey, create a travel budget, like that is part of, I feel like what feeds us in life is like that new experience. And so creating a budget to say, this is where I want to go. And so every paycheck, and the same way that I pay bills, I'm just going to, put some away for this very important learning experience, because it may be a vacation, but it's a learning experience. And so, yeah, my advice overall would be do it, and don't let all the, well, what if, like, don't let that stop you, because once you have traveled, and I like that you said, whether it be, just outside of your state or province or to another country, once you've done it, it's like, oh, it's not as bad or as hard as I thought it would be, and so just taking that first step to do it is super important.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I can relate in thinking that it would be impossible because of the cost. And even for certain countries, like there are different things that you'll need, like maybe a visa, or so you have to budget for that and the time, and just other things. But it's still not impossible. You just have to think about the different, details or things that you need in order to do it. But as you said, do it. It's an excellent experience. And even if it's short term or long term, it will definitely, build so much within you. You have things to learn. And I also want to say that I understand that people have negative experiences. I've had some, and I've known other people that have had some really bad experiences which hurt them. But I will say that it's unfortunate, but don't let that discourage you from thinking that it can't be better in the future, or it's just because some people decided to act a certain way. So be mindful of the fact that you can't control everything, but don't be afraid to go out and try and do your best. And, as Christians, we like, do your best, God will do the rest. And just trust that whatever you are gaining from it will be good for you, even if it's like you're learning from the negative experience.
Yeah, I agree that even those negative experiences you can learn from. But I think too, you make sure that it doesn't get the best of you when you don't allow that to like dictate, oh, I'm not going to travel again because this person, like, I'm not going to let you have that power over my life, and so, yeah, I think that it's like, that's one thing you keep doing, because every place is different. Again, you realize that there will be great people and people that are not so great everywhere you go. But I often like to say, if the sum of my experiences, it's the good is what I'm thinking of more than what I'm thinking of the bad, well, then I count it as good, and I take that with me. And it's like, yeah, these things may have happened, but overall, this was an amazing experience. And I won't let those little things really dictate how I remember, this experience. So.
Yeah, really, truly. Don't let it dictate how you feel. Try your best not to. But if you could describe travel in one word, what would it be and why?
My one word would be liberating. Because as I spoke before, there are things, and you even mentioned, there are things that you learn about yourself when you are in a different country, when you are experiencing things that may very well feel like inconveniences, like when you get out and you travel somewhere else, it's like you learn so much about yourself. It's like, oh, I can do this thing, like I don't have to have this amenity, that amenity to enjoy myself. And so, yeah, I think it's just really freeing, liberating, because you're learning so much about yourself, but then also the world around you. And it shrinks the world. You just realize that we are humans. We are all we're using the bathroom, we're going to work, we're stressing out, we're having fun with family. Yeah. And that may look different in cultures and context, but it's still the same thing. The backdrop is different, but the heart of it is the same. And so you really just see, oh, we're just people out here trying to live our lives,
doing life,
Yes.
People doing life is true. And I really like that, liberating. Even when you said the word, I could feel like this. I don't know. It's a good word. I like it. So how may we connect with you? Because we'd love to hear more.
Yes, definitely. So me personally, my personal page for Instagram, that's where I am most active, is Astrid, my name, Astrid, Michelle. So Michelle, but with a Y, Mychell. And for my podcast, that is Here to Edify. So HEAR to Edify. And both of those are my personal Instagram handle and the and my podcast Instagram handle. And like I said, I'm responsive on those. That's what I'm on most of the time. And yeah, that's where you get a piece of who I am.
Yeah. And I like how you, put that word together, that like pun, here to edify, because it's like you're hearing to edify. I like it. Okay. Well, Astrid, as your podcast says, edify, and I believe that this video was edifying, and we got into some deep things, but I appreciate that. But at the same time, we were able to talk about the positive, talk about the learning and how we can be better than that. And yeah, it was really good. So thank you so much for coming here, being willing to share and just having this conversation, which I believe is important.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for having the conversation as well. This has been good, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome, and your experiences as well. So thank you so much for listening, everyone. I look forward to seeing you soon. Have a great day. Bye.